Welcome back to Rare CoinX PRO. Today, we're exploring 4 fascinating Lincoln wheat pennies that every collector should know about. These coins may look ordinary, but depending on their year, mint mark, and condition, some examples can be worth far more than their face value. Stay with us until the end because our final coin has a value that might genuinely surprise you. Let's start with our first coin, the 1952 no mint mark Lincoln wheat penny. The 1952 Lincoln wheat penny comes from a coin series with an incredibly rich history behind it. The Lincoln cent was first introduced back in 1909 to mark the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, and it holds the distinction of being the very first United States coin to feature the portrait of an actual historical person rather than a symbolic figure like Liberty. The design was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner, who placed a dignified profile of Lincoln on the obverse and, on the reverse, 2 elegant stalks of Durham wheat framing the words 1 cent, a design that gave the coin its now famous nickname, the wheat penny. By 1952, this wheat reverse design had already been in continuous production for more than 4 decades, and it would only remain in use for a few more years before being retired in 1959 in favor of the Lincoln Memorial reverse we recognize today. The absence of a mint mark on this particular coin tells its own story. Unlike coins struck at Denver, which carry a small d, or San Francisco, which carry a small s, coins produced at the original Philadelphia Mint were traditionally struck without any mint mark at all. This means that a 1952 penny with no mint mark beneath the date was produced at the historic Philadelphia facility, the very first mint established in the United States. Philadelphia struck a substantial number of these coins in 1952, with production figures reaching well into the hundreds of millions, making the no mint mark 1952 penny a coin that most casual collectors will have little trouble finding in reasonable condition. In terms of background and composition, the 1952 penny was struck from a bronze alloy composed of 95% copper along with small amounts of tin and zinc, giving freshly minted examples a warm, reddish-orange glow that mellows into a deeper brown tone as the coin ages and is exposed to air and handling over the decades. Each coin weighs approximately 3.11 grams and measures 19 millimeters across, dimensions that remained standard throughout the entire wheat penny era. This was still a period of relative post-war prosperity in America, and pennies like this one changed hands constantly in everyday commerce, which explains why so many surviving examples today show real, honest wear from decades spent in circulation. When it comes to condition, this is really where the story of any 1952 penny's value begins. The vast majority of surviving examples fall into heavily circulated grades, showing smooth details on Lincoln's cheek and jawline along with worn, flattened wheat stalks on the reverse. Truly uncirculated examples, meaning coins that never entered general circulation and still display their original mint luster, are considerably scarcer, and coins that have retained their original vibrant red copper color rather than toning to brown or red-brown are the most desirable of all to serious collectors. Collector demand for the 1952 no mint mark penny remains steady rather than explosive, since its high original mintage keeps supply relatively plentiful even today. That said, interest in the series as a whole has grown substantially over recent years, driven by a new wave of collectors drawn in by stories of pocket change treasures and by the simple accessibility of wheat pennies as an entry point into serious coin collecting. As for current market value, an average circulated 1952 penny with no mint mark is typically worth only a handful of cents above face value, often somewhere between 3 and 10 cents depending on where. Coins graded as uncirculated or mint state can climb noticeably higher, commonly trading somewhere between 75 cents and a few dollars depending on strike quality and color. At the very top end of the grading scale, exceptional specimens certified in the highest mint state grades with full original red color have realized truly remarkable prices at auction, with some documented sales climbing into the thousands of dollars, and one particularly outstanding example reportedly selling for more than $9,000. These extreme prices remain rare exceptions rather than the norm, but they illustrate just how much condition and color can transform the value of an otherwise common date coin. For collecting tips, always examine your 1952 pennies closely under good lighting before assuming they are only worth face value. Look carefully for die breaks, repunched mint marks, or any doubling in the lettering, since even minor mint errors can add several dollars of premium value. Store any promising examples in individual coin flips or albums rather than loose in a jar, since even gentle handling can gradually wear down the surfaces and reduce a coin's grade over time. And remember that with a series this well documented and widely collected, patience really does pay off, since a careful search through old coin jars, bankrolls, or estate collections can genuinely turn up a surprising 1952 penny every now and then. It's also worth noting that 1952 sits within a fairly narrow window of Lincoln wheat penny production, arriving in the years between the end of the Second World War and the eventual retirement of the wheat reverse design in 1958. Coins struck during the stretch are sometimes described by collectors as belonging to the late wheat era, a period when mint technology had matured and strikes tended to be consistently sharp and well-defined compared to some of the more inconsistent output from earlier decades. This means that even a common date like the 1952 no-mint mark penny can display genuinely crisp, attractive detail when found in higher grades, which is part of why demand for well-struck examples has remained resilient among collectors who appreciate strong eye appeal over raw rarity alone. Beyond its role as an accessible piece for beginning collectors, the 1952 penny also fits neatly into larger collecting goals, such as assembling a complete date and mint mark run of the entire wheat penny series, or building a themed set focused specifically on coins from the early 1950s. For collectors pursuing either of these paths, tracking down a nicely preserved 1952 no-mint mark example is an essential and genuinely enjoyable step, since it represents a tangible piece of everyday American history from a fascinating period of post-war growth and change. Now let's move on to our second coin, the 1953 mint mark Lincoln wheat penny. The 1953 Lincoln wheat penny continues the same storied design lineage we just discussed, carrying Victor David Brenner's iconic Lincoln portrait on the obverse and the classic pair of wheat stalks on the reverse. By 1953, the design was solidly established in the American public's mind, having been in continuous production since 1909, and it would remain in use for only a handful of years longer before the switch to the Lincoln Memorial reverse arrived in 1959. This places the 1953 penny firmly within what collectors often refer to as the late wheat era, a period generally associated with consistent strike quality and dependable mint output across all three producing facilities. The small letter D stamped just beneath the date on this coin tells us exactly where it was struck, the historic Denver Mint. Denver had become an increasingly important production center for American coinage by the early 1950s, and in 1953 it truly outdid itself, striking an enormous number of pennies that year, with mintage figures reaching more than 700 million coins. This makes the 1953 D one of the highest mintage wheat pennies of the entire decade, and it explains why examples remain so widely available to collectors and casual coin hunters even more than 70 years later. In terms of background and composition, the 1953 D penny was struck using the standard bronze alloy of the era, consisting of 95% copper along with small amounts of tin and zinc rounding out the remaining 5%. Each coin weighs approximately 3.11 grams and measures 19 millimeters in diameter, dimensions that remained completely consistent throughout the wheat penny series. Freshly struck examples display a bright, warm copper red tone that gradually mellows into brown as the coin ages and reacts with oxygen in the air, a natural toning process that collectors track closely when assessing a coin's overall appeal and value. When it comes to condition, the story of the 1953 D penny is a fascinating one, because despite its enormous mintage, high-quality surviving examples are surprisingly difficult to locate. Denver's high-speed production lines during this period, while efficient, often produced somewhat weaker strikes than the more carefully monitored output coming out of Philadelphia, meaning that many original mint rolls from Denver top out around the middle range of the mint state scale rather than reaching the very highest grades. This creates an interesting situation where a coin with well over 700 million pieces struck can still become genuinely rare and valuable once you start searching for the finest, sharpest, most fully read examples. Collector demand for the 1953 D penny reflects this reality perfectly. In ordinary circulated grades, demand remains modest, since the coin is simply too common to generate much excitement among casual collectors. But once you move into the higher mint state grades, particularly MS66 and above with full original red color, demand climbs dramatically among registry set collectors and specialists who understand just how scarce truly exceptional examples of this particular date and mint combination actually are. As for current market value, an average circulated 1953D penny typically trades for just a handful of cents above face value, often somewhere between 15 and 30 cents depending on where and I appeal. Coins in lower mint state grades generally sell for a few dollars, while examples graded MS65 or MS66 can reach anywhere from $15 to nearly $40. At the very top of the grading scale, the picture changes dramatically. Documented auction records for exceptional MS67 red examples have reached well into the thousands of dollars, with one outstanding specimen selling for over $7,000 at a major auction house, and more recent sales continuing to demonstrate strong ongoing demand from collectors chasing the very finest known examples of this date. For collecting tips, always inspect any 1953D penny closely for sharp strike quality, since crisp detail on Lincoln's hairlines and full definition on the wheat stalks can make a meaningful difference in both grade and value. Watch out for interesting mint errors too, including repunched mint marks or double die varieties, since these can add substantial premiums even on an otherwise common date coin. As always, avoid cleaning any coin you believe may be valuable, since cleaning can strip away original luster and permanently damage a coin's surface, dramatically reducing its worth to serious collectors. Store promising finds properly in protective holders, and remember that with a mintage this large, patient searching through old rolls and collections can genuinely reward the careful and observant collector. It's also worth taking a moment to place the 1953D penny within the broader context of the wheat penny series as a whole. Because Denver's combined output across the 1950s was so consistently massive, collectors sometimes overlook individual years like 1953 in favor of chasing rarer dates or scarcer mint marks from earlier decades. Yet this is precisely why the 1953D deserves closer attention, since its sheer abundance in circulated grades stands in sharp contrast to its genuine scarcity in the very highest, most eye-catching mint state grades. This kind of gap between overall mintage and true condition rarity is one of the most interesting dynamics in the entire hobby, and it rewards collectors who take the time to study strike characteristics and grading standards rather than relying on mintage figures alone. The 1953D also fits naturally into several popular collecting strategies. Some collectors pursue a complete date and mint mark run of the wheat penny series from 1909 through 1958, in which case a solid 1953D example is an essential and relatively affordable addition. Others focus specifically on assembling a high-grade red registry set, chasing only the finest surviving examples of each date, and for this more specialized pursuit, a genuinely exceptional 1953D can represent one of the more challenging and rewarding pieces to track down. Either way, this coin offers a great deal more depth and collecting interest than its enormous mintage figure might initially suggest. Now let's move on to our third coin, the 1955D Mint Mark Lincoln Wheat Penny. The 1955 Lincoln Wheat Penny holds a genuinely special place in American numismatic history, and understanding why requires a quick look at the entire year rather than just this single coin. 1955 is widely considered one of the most exciting years in the whole wheat penny series, largely because of a famous double die error that appeared on pennies struck at the Philadelphia Mint that year, a dramatic mint mistake that caused the date and lettering to appear clearly doubled. That particular error coin became one of the most celebrated varieties in all of American coin collecting and helped spark enormous public interest in the hobby during the mid-1950s. While our coin today, the 1955D from Denver, is not the famous double die variety itself, it still benefits from sitting within this same historically significant year, and it carries plenty of collecting interest entirely on its own merits. The small d beneath the date on this coin confirms it was struck at the Denver Mint, which by 1955 had firmly established itself as one of the most productive coin-producing facilities in the entire country. Denver struck an absolutely massive number of pennies in 1955, with mintage figures reaching well over 560 million coins, making the 1955D one of the highest production wheat pennies of the entire decade and, by extension, one of the most genuinely common dates in the whole series. In terms of background and composition, the 1955D penny continues the same design and metal specifications used throughout this era, struck from a bronze alloy of 95% copper along with small amounts of tin and zinc, weighing approximately 3.11 grams and measuring 19 millimeters across. Victor David Brenner's original Lincoln portrait still graces the obverse, while the reverse continues to display the two wheat stalks that gave the series its enduring nickname. This was a period of tremendous industrial output at the Denver Mint, reflecting the broader post-war economic expansion happening across the United States at the time, with coins like this one changing hands constantly in everyday American commerce. When it comes to condition, the Denver Mint's high-volume production during 1955 means that most surviving examples fall somewhere in the middle of the grading scale, showing moderate wear typical of coins that circulated actively for years or even decades before eventually being pulled aside by a collector. Truly gem-quality examples, meaning coins graded in the very highest mint state tiers with full original red color, are considerably harder to locate, since the sheer speed of Denver's minting operations during this period sometimes resulted in less than perfectly sharp strikes, making the finest quality survivors genuinely scarce despite the enormous original mintage. Collector demand for the 1955D penny benefits enormously from its association with that famous double die year, even though this particular coin is the standard business strike rather than the error variety. Many collectors building a complete date set specifically want a nice 1955D example to sit alongside their 1955 double die coin, if they are fortunate enough to own one, which keeps demand for well-preserved Denver examples consistently healthy across the hobby. As for current market value, an average circulated 1955D penny is typically worth just a small premium over face value, generally landing somewhere between 15 cents and $1 depending on where and eye appeal. Coins in the lower mint state grades commonly sell for around $4 to $7. While examples reaching MS65 or MS66 can climb to somewhere between $15 and $80 depending on strike quality and color. At the top of the grading scale, truly exceptional MS67 red examples have realized genuinely remarkable prices at auction, with documented sales reaching several $1,000s, including one especially outstanding specimen that sold for $8,400 through a major auction house in recent years. For collecting tips, always check any 1955 penny carefully for doubling in the date or lettering before assuming it's simply a common Denver strike, since the famous double die variety is highly counterfeited and imitated by so-called poor man's double dies that show only minor, worthless machine doubling. Any coin you suspect might be the genuine double die should always be sent to a reputable third-party grading service for authentication before buying or selling. For your standard 1955D examples, focus on strike sharpness and original color when evaluating potential value, and always store promising coins properly to preserve their condition for years to come. It's worth remembering just how important 1955 was as a turning point for the entire hobby of coin collecting in America. The publicity surrounding that year's famous double die error introduced countless ordinary Americans to the idea that a coin found in everyday pocket change could actually be worth serious money, and that realization helped fuel a genuine boom in coin collecting that continued for years afterward. The 1955D penny, simply by virtue of sharing its date with such a celebrated variety, benefits from a level of collector awareness and interest that many other common date wheat pennies from the same decade simply don't enjoy to the same degree. Beyond its historical connection to that famous error, the 1955D also stands as an excellent example of just how much strike quality can vary even within an enormous mintage. Because Denver's production volume was so high that year, collectors who take the time to search specifically for sharply struck, well-centered examples with strong luster are often rewarded with coins that look far more impressive than their common date status might suggest. For anyone building a complete wheat penny collection, or simply looking to pair a nice 1955D business strike alongside a double die variety, this coin offers a genuinely satisfying combination of affordability, availability, and real historical significance tied to one of the most exciting years in the entire series. And now, let's take a look at our fourth and final coin, the 1956 no-mint mark Lincoln Wheat Penny. The 1956 Lincoln Wheat Penny occupies a genuinely special position within the entire series, because it represents one of the very last wheat pennies ever struck before the design changed forever. Just 3 years later, in 1959, the mint retired the wheat stalk reverse entirely in favor of the Lincoln Memorial design to mark the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. This makes any wheat penny from the mid to late 1950s, including our 1956 example, part of the closing chapter of a design that had defined the American penny for exactly half a century. The absence of a mint mark beneath the date tells us this particular coin was struck at the original Philadelphia Mint, continuing the long-standing tradition where Philadelphia issued coins without any distinguishing letter, while Denver and San Francisco struck their coins with a small d or s respectively. Philadelphia produced a substantial number of pennies in 1956, with mintage figures reaching more than 420 million coins, a huge number by any historical standard, though notably smaller than the enormous output coming out of Denver that same year. In terms of background and composition, the 1956 no-mint mark penny follows the same specifications used throughout the wheat penny era, struck from a bronze alloy consisting of 95% copper along with small amounts of tin and zinc making up the balance. Each coin weighs approximately 3.11 grams and measures 19 millimeters in diameter. Freshly struck examples display that classic warm copper red tone, which naturally darkens toward brown over the decades as the surface reacts with air, moisture, and handling, a toning process that plays a major role in how collectors ultimately grade and value any individual coin. When it comes to condition, the 1956 Philadelphia penny tends to be found in relatively good shape more often than some of its Denver counterparts from the same year, since Philadelphia's production methods during this period were generally associated with somewhat more careful strike quality. That said, the coin is still common enough in circulated grades that most examples found today show real, honest wear from years spent in active commerce. Truly gem-quality examples with full original red color and razor-sharp strike details remain considerably scarcer, and it is specifically at this top end of the grading scale where the 1956 penny becomes a genuinely interesting coin for serious collectors to pursue. Collector demand for the 1956 no-mint mark penny is driven heavily by its position as one of the final wheat pennies ever produced, which gives it a natural appeal to collectors assembling a complete date run of the entire series, as well as to those specifically interested in coins from the design's closing years. Interest in high-grade red examples has grown steadily over recent years as well, fueled by increased participation in registry set collecting, where collectors compete to assemble the finest documented examples of every date and mint mark combination in a series. As for current market value, an average circulated 1956 penny typically trades for a modest premium above face value, often landing somewhere between 55 cents and a few dollars depending on where and overall eye appeal. Uncirculated examples in the lower mint state grades commonly sell for a comparable range, while coins reaching MS65 or MS66 with strong red color can command noticeably higher prices. At the very top of the grading scale, the results become genuinely striking, with a documented auction record for an exceptional MS67 plus red example reaching an astonishing $57,600, a truly remarkable price that highlights just how valuable a common date coin can become when it survives in essentially perfect, pristine condition. 4 collecting tips. Always examine any 1956 penny closely for its color designation, since full red examples command significantly more than red-brown or brown coins in the same numerical grade. Watch for interesting varieties too, including double dies or repunched mint marks, since these can add meaningful premiums even on an otherwise common date. Avoid cleaning any coin you suspect might be valuable, since doing so can strip original luster and permanently reduce its grade and worth. And remember that as one of the final true wheat pennies ever struck, a well-preserved 1956 example makes a genuinely fitting and historically meaningful centerpiece for any wheat penny collection. It's also worth appreciating just how much this coin symbolizes the end of an entire era in American coinage. When the wheat penny was first introduced back in 1909, it broke new ground as the first American coin to depict a real historical figure, and it went on to survive 2 world wars, the Great Depression, and decades of enormous social and economic change before finally giving way to the Lincoln Memorial design in 1959. A 1956 penny, whether from Philadelphia or Denver, represents one of the closing pages of that remarkable 50-year story, struck at a moment when the mint was already beginning internal discussions about retiring the wheat reverse altogether, even though the buying public at the time had no idea their pocket change was on borrowed time. This historical weight is part of why so many collectors specifically seek out well-preserved examples from these final wheat penny years, treating them almost as a symbolic bridge between 2 very different eras of American coin design. For anyone assembling a complete date and mint mark run of the wheat penny series, the 1956 no mint mark example is an essential and relatively accessible addition, while collectors chasing only the very finest graded examples will find that true gem quality specimens remain a genuinely rewarding and challenging pursuit, even for a coin produced in such enormous original numbers. As we've seen today, these 4 Lincoln wheat pennies show that even the most common coins from your pocket change or an old collection can carry real history and, in the right condition, real value. Whether you're just beginning your coin collecting journey or you've been collecting for years, it's always worth checking your spare change because you never know when you might discover a hidden treasure. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another exciting coin collecting video.